aboard Pink Monorail. I'm your pilot, Michelle Valladolid, and next to me is my co-pilot, Noe Valladolid.
Hey everybody.
Welcome back to Manufacturing the Magic. This is the series part where we talk about the mechanics of magic. Last episode, we talked about dark rides. This episode, we're going to talk about early versions of animatronics called automatons. Ancient Greeks invented the automaton, animatronic without electronics. China was doing so at the same time as was ancient Egypt. These were very primitive. There is evidence that they built an eagle and a dolphin for early Olympic Games. Archithius, who lived from 428 to 347 BC, made little working birds. Other automata were dedicated to weaponry, like Philon of Byzantine, who lived from 280 to 220 BC, and his repeating crossbow. ClassicalWisdom.com says the Hellenistic period had many automatons, and the city of Rhodes displayed them in the city square. The book on automaton making by mathematician and engineer Hero of Alexandria talked about mostly practical uses, like fire engines and self-driving wagons, etc. Also in Alexandria, there was a theater peopled entirely of automatons on its stage, like an early Country Bear jamboree. You can read more about Hero, who many consider the father of automaton, at themadmuseum.co.uk. Hero built a water basin in Alexandria with birds that sang and an owl who turned its head to look at the birds. When it did so, the birds became quiet. One of his most popular inventions was a wind wheel. It was the first time humans had harnessed wind power outside of the sea, and they don't kill whales.
No, they also are supposed to kill birds that are just flying by.
Oh yeah, no, they don't. Ctesibiosis Ctesitas was a student of pneumatics, which were used in first-generation Disney animatronics and created a pneumatic water clock. Pneumatic means containing or operated by air or gas under pressure. When Paris was being built, Disneyland Paris was being built, Imagineer David Mumford was telling me about how they did the walkthrough at WDI of the 20,000 Leagues exhibit. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the squid ready yet, so he stood behind his friend and went to mimic the sounds of the pneumatics, and his friend was all, "No, it's not going to sound like that. It's not going to sound like that." So when he and Tom Sherman went to Paris, they did.
When they were backstage setting it up, it was making the sound.
Yeah.
From the air pressure.
Philo of Byzantium made the first historically noted working robot. It was a maid who could, when a cup was placed into her hand, pour wine into the cup. The robot could even mix water into the drink. But could it throw a chair like Mr. Lincoln? Which I'll get to that story when I talk about the 1964 World's Fair. Daedalus was said to have made moving, breathing statues, and others were said to make birds that could sing and fly.
Well, now, wait a minute. So, Daedalus was the father of Icarus in myth, and so he was really a bird guy because he made his kid some wings so that they would escape the island, and his kid went a little bit too high for his own good?
That's right.
So what else did
Daedalus
do?
Like that Iron Maiden song.
What else did Daedalus do?
He made magpies, pigeons, and blackbirds. The Greeks continued their development of automata into the Middle Ages. Emperor Theophilus and King Soleimon, not Solomon, had mechanical thrones that featured clockwork animals, or would rise into the skies, or would feature moving, roaring lions. Imagine being an ancient person and the king's throne just rising.
And has probably stuffed lions that have something inside of them that roar. That would have scared the tar out of me.
I would have been very impressed and thought that they were a deity. The 8th century saw the first wind-powered automata. The entrance of Baghdad had 4 wind-powered statues, featuring a man on a horse with a spear, appearing to charge.
Now, Baghdad, in Iraq, that was where ancient Babylon was.
It was really a beautiful and advanced culture.
Yeah, so when we talk about ancient history, the ancient Greeks, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, they all had technology and techniques for farming, for architecture, for construction that were...
And beautiful artwork.
Beautiful artwork that were ages ahead of many other civilizations. Gosh, I wish I had seen it back then, especially the Hanging Gardens.
Really? In the 9th century, also in Baghdad, was the Banu Musa, where 3 brothers wanted an automatic flute player. This was probably the world's first programmable machine. The user would use steam adjusted to create different notes. They went on to create mechanical grabbers, lamps, and fountains. Old school Islam allowed figures. Newer Islam doesn't. Stories abound of their inventions, all destroyed, including a mechanical tree with swinging branches upon which sat singing birds.
This was ages and ages before the Enchanted Tiki Room.
Yes.
Wow. 9th century.
9th century.
Holy smokes.
In 1206, Al-Jazari published The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, including a boat with an automaton orchestra playing for royal drinking parties, which they don't drink anymore either. There were 4 automaton musicians, 2 drummers, a harpist, and a flautist. Automaton oarsmen kept the boat moving around the lake. Al-Jazari had a sense of humor and designed automatons for entertainment and also practical jokes, like a water cup with holes that had no water. On the boat was a rotating drum that operated pegs that worked levers to operate the different instruments. The automatons moved their heads, arms, and legs in a lifelike manner.
So not only did this inventor create automatons for the land, but he had automatons on moving boats.
Yes.
That could perform for guests.
Yes.
More than 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
That is absurd technology.
Now we go forward to the 15th century. In the 15th century, there was a rise in interest in automata. French philosopher and mathematician René Descartes wrote that the bodies of animals were complex machines whose internal organs could be replicated by cams or pistons. German mathematician and inventor Johannes Müller von Königsberg created many figures, including a magnificent mechanical eagle. The wooden bird flew to the entrance of Königsberg, now called Nuremberg, to greet the Emperor Maximilian upon his arrival, saluted him, and then returned. There is a crater on the moon named for Johannes Müller. Leonardo da Vinci built a mechanical lion created in honor of Louis XII. It could shake its tail, open its mouth, walk and rear upon its hind legs. It would open its own chest with a claw, revealing a French coat of arms inside.
Man, what couldn't Leonardo da Vinci invent?
Right? During the 16th century, the easily bored Emperor Charles V had Gianello della Tour create several pieces of automata for him, including various mechanical birds who could fly and soldiers that would fight or play musical instruments for him. Juanello Tariano was an Italian-Spanish clockmaker, engineer, and mathematician. He was mechanic to the aforementioned Charles V, was born in Cremona, Italy, and lived from 1500 to 1585. He built a clockwork monk that is presently featured in the Smithsonian Institution, a museum in Washington, D.C. The little monk is made of iron and wood and can move its head, arms, and legs, can beat its chest like mea culpa. If you're not Catholic, that's part of the old last rites.
Right.
As you would say, my fault, my
Right.
most grievous fault, and beat your chest. It could roll its eyes and move its mouth. It was operated with a key-wound spring, and the mechanism is wholly contained within the figure.
Now, this mechanical monk, this is not a 2-scale human or a slightly smaller scale human?
It's smaller.
But still, everything was inside of him and it can do all of these things.
Right.
Wowee.
You can see its picture in the Smithsonian Institute website.
It's, what, 600, 700 years old?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
During the 1600s, Christian Huygens created many figures for the King of France, including an entire fighting army.
Now, the terracotta statues from the Chinese kings were nice, but they didn't do the fighting.
No.
They only fought in the afterlife.
Only in the afterlife. Frenchman Jacques de Vaucanson created a digesting duck. This is so gross. You could feed it food and it would digest it using chemicals and excrete waste. It was made of copper, could flap its wings, quack, and had over 40 moving parts. Later, he made a mechanical flute player. When people got close, they could feel the figure breathe.
Now, to be fair, I remember in the late 70s, my older cousin had a toy that you could feed it and it would poop. And I think even Barbie had like a dog or something where you could feed it and it would poop little pellets. So, I appreciate that he invented the digesting duck.
Baby Alive or something?
Yeah, and there was even a baby doll that would fill its diapers.
That would poop, yeah.
Yeah, nice try, Jacques.
Swiss mathematician Henri Maillardet built the Draftsman automaton, which could draw 4 pictures, write poems, and had a memory larger than anything seen before. It was not self-contained, with most of the mechanics in a large box attached to the figure. It is on display at Philadelphia's Franklin Institute. When it would complete its 4th drawing, it would write, "Written by the automaton of Maillardet." Pierre-Jacques Droz, a Swiss-born watchmaker, created 3 automaton dolls with his son that still exist and amaze people to this day: the musician, the draftsman, and the writer. The writer dips his pen into ink and can write up to 40 different letters. The machine has over 6,000 parts. The draftsman is a child who can draw a picture of King Louis XV, and the musician plays the organ, pressing the keys while her head moves and her chest is seen to rise and fall with her breath. She even bows at the end of each performance. The museum's website, mahn.ch/en, had performances listed, but it looks like the last one was December 3rd, 2023. But look at the website and see if there's any more coming up.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure some people have probably recorded them for YouTube.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Now, the thing for young engineers and young scientists to think about is the concepts that they were presenting with these automaton are still pretty much in use to this day. But instead of having clockwork gears and pre-written scripts on mechanical or analog devices all located in a box. So that would be similar to programming everything on a PC or a memory card. And then you're just updating the technology with modern pneumatics or digital devices. So the idea is still pretty sound. So they were just sitting on top of their old versions of computers, and today they would just be sitting on a teeny tiny little memory chip.
Right. Around 1860, especially in Paris, many automaton creators sprang up. Things like Walt Disney's bird in a cage that sinks in his office. Someone brought him back, or he brought back from Europe. Mm-hmm. A little bird in a cage that sings.
You wind it up.
And when we went to Walt's office, we saw it.
Oh, we did.
And they made it sing. And that was one of my bucket list things.
To see it? To
see that bird. And yeah. I did.
And I'm sure that stuck with him. It's like, if only there was a way to share the magic of this creature with other people and on a slightly bigger scale.
He not only made the tiki birds inspired by that, but also the singing bird from Mary Poppins. Remember the robin that sings on her finger?
That was before Disneyland, so that was the sort of like the prototype.
Do you know what happened to that bird, where it is now?
Is it in the archives?
No, it's not. It is actually performing every day at the Carousel of Progress in Florida.
Really?
Yeah, it's the bird that sings in the window in the first scene.
Oh, wow, that's some history there.
Joseph Farber's Euphonia would carry on simple conversations, laugh, and sing in many different languages.
So you said Euphonia, so was this a talking instrument or a person?
A person.
Oh, okay.
He took it on tour, which wasn't successful. Incensed that he wasn't getting the recognition he deserved, he destroyed Euphonia in a fit of rage.
Oh, no.
Next time, we'll talk about how electricity influenced animatronics, and I'll tell you where Disneyland's animatronic graveyard is located.
So this brings us to sort of the changeover from analog to the beginnings of modern animatronics.
And we're going to discuss that with Imagineer Joe Lanzisero.
Now, we're going to pause for a moment so that we can have a word from our sponsors. As always, if you can support the people that help us pay the bills, we'd really appreciate it. And we're back. Now we're going to join a conversation with Joe Lanzisero and talk about the change of automata went into animatronics.
See, I love stories. And that was another talk that I did at the UX conference. about the importance of story in everything you do.
Yes.
And then I always talk about story as narrative and story as subtext. Story as narrative is, mostly what Disney does when you take the story and make it into part of the experience. But I think equally as important is story as subtext, that maybe it's not known, like your ring, you look at it and, oh, that's a beautiful thing, but understanding that there's story behind it. And I say, like, when you're for design teams, and again, I use the examples from the cruise ships, because a lot of the things there, we built pretty elaborate backstories, like on the Dream, the nightclub, no, that was on the Fantasy, on the nightclub district, we did the Europa, where you could go to all the different countries in one night. The idea was that you could travel through Europe in one night without a passport. So that was the story that we created, the subtext story. Most of the guests don't know that, but then we use that to kind of design it, and who, all your design choices then have a filter that you can put them through. Okay, so I have one night to go Europe. Where are the places I want to make sure I go? Oh, we got to go to Ireland. We got to go to Italy. So it really works as a tool. And these people, and remember, most of the people that come to this conference are not Disney fans, which it's good for me. I love talking to my audience, the Disney audience, but it just, to know that there were all these skills and things and experiences that I had that I can translate now to other people in other industries, and they're, oh, really? You guys you can use story for that, and then I've actually done
story for anything.
What? Yeah, everybody knows family. I say, always got to find those human touch points. What are those things? Now, I tried to do in everything that I ever designed was about finding a human touch point. What's the thing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Albert the monkey is us.
Yep.
When you
don't touch that box.
Yeah.
As soon as you turn your back,
he's a mischievous little kid, and all of us have that in us. So I always say it's really important. People have to be able to see themselves in some way in the experience.
In 1900, L. Frank Baum wrote about the Tin Woodman, and in 1907 he wrote about a wind-up mechanical man called Tick-Tock. And I have a story about Tick-Tock. Jim Hill, my ex-husband, was working press at the 25th anniversary, I believe is where they had the Tick-Tock out for the electrical parade. So he saw the float and he was a little tipsy, and he decided he was going to go and wind up Tick-Tock.
Okay.
So he went and he wound it, and the cardboard key came off in his hand, and he immediately stuffed it under his jacket and fled.
Okay.
So he goes outside to the viewing area, and they get to watch the floats light up right before they go. They light up, and Tick-Tock points his hand at Jim. Like, you! And Jim still has the key.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Because we do not want Disney to contact him to retrieve property that he may or may not have.
Right.
Yeah. It's a piece of cardboard.
Allegedly.
Okay.
There's one thing I learned from other podcasts. Whenever an incriminating story comes up, just say allegedly.
There you go.
Your defense against the lawyers, cease and desist.
Exactly. It's alleged.
That's a sport. That's alleged.
Yeah, right.
The term robot was first used in a play by Karel Čapek in 1920, taken from the Slovak word for work or labor. Westinghouse, which was really big on making robots, I don't know if you know that.
Now, did they do the robot at the 39 World's Fair?
Yeah.
And then he made a reprise in the 63 World's Fair. And then he ended up at Pacific Ocean Park.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever read?
I have, but it's been so long.
I think he's even got a picture of him. And I remember as a kid.
I love that book. I read it so much I wore the cover off.
Yeah, she wore the cover off.
Did you go to Pacific Ocean?
No, I never went.
I grew up with growing up in here. Our summers were Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Pacific Ocean Park.
Oh.
And there was a moment there where I actually liked Pacific Ocean Park better because it was I don't know, there was something kind of it was the location.
A little sexier.
It was being at the beach. I mean,
okay.
I grew up born and raised here, so there was something about the smell of the sea air too. But I think he actually has. I won't take the time to, but look through it. He's got a picture of the robot
This
here.
is in Chris Merritt's Pacific Ocean Park book.
Yeah, sorry. Go.
And
It's so easy to digress with you guys.
that's great. Digress away. Westinghouse first made a robot made of cardboard in 1926.
Wow.
And then in 1927, Metropolis came out, and Maria was the first robot on film.
This was
Metropolis.
Oh, of course. Very sexy robot, too.
Yeah. Also in 1927, the Gakuten Soku was created in Japan as a diplomatic robot. It could write and raise its eyelids. It could do a lot of the tricks an automaton could do, too. Sing with a recorder, talk, write, draw things. I don't know if it could draw, but it was all electric. Eric in London in 1928 was the first robot in a silver suit. An aluminum suit of armor. He could move his hands and head and be controlled by remote or voice control. In 1939, Electro, who we were just talking about, appeared at the World's Fair in New York. He was 7 feet tall, 265 pounds. He could walk by voice command, speak about 700 words using a 78 RPM record player, smoke cigarettes.
Oh, I remember.
A very important task for a robot.
He could blow up balloons and move his head and arms. The body consisted of a steel gear cam and motor skeleton covered by aluminum skin. His eyes could distinguish between red and green light. He was a photoelectric robot.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And he had a dog, Sparko, that would come out on command, and he could shake hands, bark, and beg.
Oh.
I don't know if he could lift his leg.
Actually, that may have made him the perfect dog.
In 1941 and 1942, Isaac Asimov formulated the 3 laws of robotics. That was where the term robotics first came from.
It's so interesting. Just yesterday on NPR, there was a story about AI, and the lady was talking about how college students now, AI is taking the place of college counselors. That it's cheaper to use an AI to help you, write your essay to get into the college. And then she mentioned Isaac, and he was the first one of the robots could read to him in one of his books. And she was saying how, well, wow, this is that reality that, she goes, and she, I can't remember what the connection was to audiobooks, but she was saying, well, an audiobook is a robot basically reading to me, right?
Absolutely.
Giving you driving directions.
Yeah, giving you driving directions. In the 1950s in Japan, robots became popular anime characters like Astro Boy. Joe's got an Astro Boy on his desk and another one.
Well,
two.
Well, let me tell you, I had
a drawing of you as Astro Boy.
I will tell you the story why Astro Boy, and that was another parting gift this was from WDIJ. This was from OLC. That was from WDIJ. When I first made my first trip to Japan for Disney, in I think it was 88 or 89. And my only connection with real understanding of Japanese culture, pop culture, was through growing up watching it was Astro Boy, not Atom Boy. It was Astro Boy, and I loved it. At the time, I didn't really understand why I loved it, but I think it was that human aspect. That Astro Boy, had a heart. And he had he had a heart and he had a conscience, and so I told them that when I went to Japan and I started working with WD with the OLC group. And I said, "Oh God, yeah, I love." And they took me to this little toy shop in somewhere in downtown Tokyo, and I bought one and brought it back with me. Every single trip from that moment on, when I would arrive in Tokyo, there would be a new Atom Boy or Astro Boy waiting on my desk.
Oh.
I probably have a picture somewhere in my office. If you saw my office at WDI, I had one shelf, maybe a third smaller than this, that was just Astro Boy toys. I had the robots. I had the lunchbox. You name it, Astro Boy. they're in boxes now in my storage unit. But yeah, so that was my connection with Astro Boy.
Oh, very good. Robots that resemble humans were called androids at first until Star Wars, and then droids became ones that thought like humans, but had non-humanoid forms, like the mouse droid, my favorite. Which brings us to the 60s. The term audio animatronics was coined by Walt Disney in 1961 when he first made his team's creations public. Also in 1961, Heinrich Ernst created a lifelike computer hand. Now we get into the age of Disney, so we can talk. In 1963, the Tiki Room. And it was going to be a restaurant, as you probably know.
Oh, yeah.
It was going to be a Chinese restaurant with a big statue of Confucius in the middle of it, chiming out every few minutes with a piece of wisdom.
Oh.
And then they thought about bringing in live birds, but Walt didn't want them pooping on the food.
Good choice, Walt.
And then they came up with the audio animatronic birds. And Walt went to the Sherman Brothers and said, "You are going to write a song for this attraction," and they did.
Have you, just another quick aside, have you been to Walt's office at the studio?
Yes, I saw the bird.
Yeah.
I talked about it in the...
And the piano.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Sherman Brothers piano there. Yeah.
Yeah, I got weepy, I admit, but what a beautiful day.
Who gave you the tour? Oh,
it was the opening day.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
Joanna
okay.
Miller was there. It was really
wow.
nice.
Yeah, I think it's so great that they
that's
did.
When
and
that's when I met
Dave...
Bob Iger.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
I met Bob Iger. Said I worked for Mice Chat, and he was like, "Ugh." Yeah. And I said, No. You read my stuff. All my stuff is nice. It's history.
Okay.
Okay, because he wasn't supposed to be there for the presentation.
Ah.
The Disney grandkids were there.
Mm-hmm.
They made a little speech, and as everybody was leaving,
he came forward and said a few words, and I was like,
yeah, and so they're like, well, she writes for Mice Chat. That's one of the online sites, and usually that's all negative stuff. And Jeffrey goes, that's one of the good sites. And I was like, okay, we got a picture with her.
And Mice Chat isn't negative. Dusty wants Disney to be the best it can be, and will call out when it's not.
Right. It's, you know what? It comes from a place of love.
Exactly.
It's like, when you discipline your child, you're disappointed that they, because you love them so much, you want them to be perfect,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Then Mary Poppins came out, and they had the Robin, the audio animatronic Robin. Yeah.
Now, was her hand real?
It was, yeah, her hand was real. It was on her hand, and the wires went up her sleeve and down her dress and out to an operator who was operating it at the time. And that bird is now in the Carousel of Progress in Florida, in the window.
Oh, wow.
In the springtime section. Oh,
the
the robins are back. Yeah. Exactly. And now we come to the New York World's Fair of 1964. Which I'm going to get into. It's going to be its own episode. But it was not a legal World's Fair. It was not sanctioned by the governing board. This New York...
As you can see, I got a number of books on World's Fairs. I'm
fabulous.
A fan of the World's Fair. And Robert Moses, he was a very interesting character. He had like, he wanted that to be Robert Moses Park after the fair. I mean, he had political.
He sure did.
Yeah.
He sure did. His stamp is still over half the city.
But it was he had the foresight to.
He had the vision.
And he went after Walt. He knew he needed that populist piece to it.
Yes.
And it was the perfect marriage. Walt was looking to test out his stuff on the East Coast. Robert needed something populist. So it was like, okay, perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except I always forget Robert Moses' name.
Yeah.
It's such an easy name, too. So we've got It's a Small World, which almost didn't happen. Joan Crawford was head of Pepsi and had her guy call Imagineering, WED, and asked to do an attraction for the World's Fair. And the guy said, we're working on 3 other things. We can't. Sorry, bye. So Walt, who never goes to Hollywood parties, went to a Hollywood party. And there's Joan Crawford, and she said, I'm so sorry we couldn't work together. And Walt's like, what are you talking about? The next morning, they started work on It's a Small World.
And wasn't it only like less than a year out? Or
Yeah, it was less than a year out.
Yeah. I I always pointed to Small World and other attractions. By time I got, and it got worse the longer I was at Disney, how bloated the company had become. It had become this big aircraft carrier. It couldn't do anything quickly. And I remember talking with Rolly Crump about those early attractions. There was, because Rolly came back to work for a short time at Imagineering, and I actually worked with him a little bit. We were on the Land Pavilion. He was going to redo the Land Pavilion. He ended up just the main courtyard there.
Right.
He did some stuff on that, and so while he was there, they did a show of his period, his time, the early days, and I was commenting to him. I said, there are very few renderings. I said most of the art from that period are looser sketches, just done with, because I'm an artist, and that interested me. That was just done with watercolor or colored pencil. Very few like beautiful renderings, which at the time that's all we did. And he said, well, the difference is, he goes, now you're having to sell it to executives who have no vision. He goes, back then our job was just to try to get enough information, get inside of Walt's head and try to get enough information on the paper so Walt will go, okay, yeah, that's what I have in my head. Go build that.
Right.
And so when they brought Small World to Disneyland, and I remember going down the archives and looking at the plans for the Disneyland It's a Small World. And they're so sketchy. There's so little information on them, but there's this continual note that says, please see art director. Because Rolly said, basically, and we were just, taking what we did in New York. He said, and then we arm waved 80% of it when we got to Disneyland.
Right.
We knew we knew where the ride track went, and we just had to make it all work inside the building. And the project managers, they wanted everything figured out to the nth degree on everything, and that's money. Right. Time is money. And I remember Marty Sklar early on in my career saying, and I think he regretted saying these words. He said, 70% of what we do is made in the field. And because he was from that generation where there were people that they understood what they were trying to do. They knew the mechanics of it and all that, but there was still a lot of, and that's how you could do It's a Small World in less than a year. Let's just, figure it out as we go along, right? Because you had a guy who was willing to take chances and risk. Where as I got deeper into my career, there was less and less risk taking. I mean, they did to a degree, but certainly not, and risk in different levels too, but certainly going back to Rolly's, it was just about figuring out what Walt wanted, and getting enough information so he would say, yeah, that's it. And you didn't have to have, a set of drawings that high that worked out every nut and bolt for everything. Anyway,
you get a focus group.
Yeah.
And you get all those drawings and stuff, and you get Galaxy's Edge.
Yes.
But we digress. We're talking about a Hollywood party. Joan Crawford.
Okay, so Joan Crawford's there and saying, wish we could work together.
And Walt's like, what? And gets on the phone, and the next morning they start working on it. I want to talk a little bit about the Magic Skyway. The characters on there and the animals were more like the Jungle Cruise.
Yeah. Which
were kind of limited in movement.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody else was doing it until after Disney did.
Yeah.
And then Sally Rides came in and did their jungle ride. So people would go through, and there's the back of a mammoth laying on its back, dead, in one of the scenes. And they took that mammoth and they painted it. And they put it on the Jungle Cruise. And now when you go by in the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland, and there's one elephant butt That is actually the mammoth
from Magic Skyway.
from Magic Skyway.
Wow. Can I talk for a moment I became a student of this because I came from animation. And what Walt did that set his animatronics apart, and I think this Magic Skyway, which you just mentioned about, the limited animation, but they were still very much alive because Walt and his animators knew how to put life in a single drawing.
You're right.
And that was Mark Davis's genius.
Mm-hmm.
That he knew in a single drawing how to tell a story by infusing it with life in the pose. Like that very scene you were talking about with the mammoth, the cavemen that were around it had very little animation in them, but their poses were so dynamic that the pose itself moved
Right.
without movement.
Right.
And I remember, talking with Mark about, the genius of everything that he did. He said,
I love how much Magic Skyway ended up in World of Motion.
Yeah.
But yeah, the genius of Mark Davis, you're saying.
Yeah. So he understood how to take a single pose and bring it to life without that much movement. And how you stage things, so that, the storytelling and the staging had life and movement in it without that much movement. And
Same thing with Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, I mean, look at the rhino, with the guys on the. How much? All they do is move up and down, but there's so much movement in that because their poses.
The story
and the storytelling again. I mean, it's so animated, but how much movement is in there? And I think that's where a lot of the designers and a lot of the stuff I can point to lost its way because they became infatuated with the movement and not with the storytelling, the basic storytelling and staging.
I was just thinking about this morning with Hondo Onaka at Galaxy's Edge.
Oh my, he looks like a man in a Halloween spirit costume. And and that's the other thing about animatronic. You can do anything with animatronics, right? I mean, he could have been, a character holding two heads and there's no head on. Just think all the imaginative things you could do. Not a guy who looks like he's, a real human. And it depends so much on the dialogue, to create and that's the other thing.
And that's the thing. When I stood in front of him, all I could think of was, wow, his movements are so natural. What a great animatronic. This is the A1000. And I didn't catch what he said.
Right.
You have no memory of what he said.
Right.
None. And I did single rider every other time I went.
Aoa, though.
All right.
Aoa, yeah.
That's an example of
Who?
A100. Aoa, the Tiki Goddess of Disaster. The only good thing about the Tiki Room under new management.
Oh, at Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another great use of the A100s is for those characters that you have such a familiar understanding of their movement from the films. Lumiere in the Beauty and the Beast meet and greet thing at Walt Disney World, whatever it's called, when he moves like Lumiere.
Yeah.
Right, and you expect them to move. So in that regard, use, and I haven't seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing the Beauty and the Beast ride at Tokyo. What I've seen.
Maybe you can tell me how they did the last scene, because no one can figure it out.
The transformation.
Okay.
I know. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Just like nobody can figure out how we do the disappearing Shiriki. Have you seen the video?
Yes.
Where Shiriki disappears right before your eyes? I mean, literally,
nobody
can figure it out. I know
because he's in the office right here.
Carousel of Progress. These were all A100s, and people talk about Mr. Lincoln, how great Mr. Lincoln was. But my favorites were the Carousel of Progress.
Oh, me too.
I have a Siamese cat, just like the long-haired Siamese cat in the last scene.
Uh-huh.
And then we had that cat when I was little, and we'd go see it at Disneyland, and I go, Chad!
Okay, so see, this goes back to what I said earlier about being able to see yourself or things that you know in an attraction, and that brings life to it too, because you have a frame of reference, in your head. I think like the Hondo character, you have no frame of reference for
unless you've
this
watched
guy.
the show.
Yeah. And again, floaters, swimmers, divers.
Right.
The divers might have seen the show, but those floaters, and they're whoa, what is this? So so they would have done something, that made them like I don't know. Anyway, my point is, those successful things are successful because they find those human touch points, those things that your cat, the robin in the window. I love the uncle in the bathtub.
No privacy at all around.
And how much animation was there? Just his toes, I think, were
just
moving.
His toes.
Yeah, which added a little bit of humor to it.
Right.
But it's genius. That was brilliant.
And Mel Blanc.
Yeah.
Now, for the people that are listening to the podcast, though, you guys are using words like A100.
Yeah.
What the heck is an A100?
A100 is the your standard issue animatronic from Disney. And then there was the Sarkos, which was the Wicked Witch of the West.
Right, because those had compliance. They worked with, I think it was the University of Utah, who were working on, they were doing, for medical robot. So it was about, the way it would pull and push. I don't know the technicalities of it, but it made it look way more natural.
And they redid the auctioneer in Disneyland.
Yeah.
I think at Walt Disney World too.
Yeah.
So there are different levels, and these are what the names.
Oh, Alice Davis hated them.
That Disney internal gave their animatronics, because some had limited motions, maybe just moved one arm, moved up and down. And these are the ones that were closer to the guests, so they had to be a little bit more lifelike, a little bit more animated.
Or the level of performance too, necessary to tell the story.
Now the A1000s are like Hondo, and some of the ones coming up that are the superstar A figures.
Yeah. I think like a lot of the ones like in the Beauty and the Beast and in the Frozen rides,
those are beautiful.
And again, I think that is the absolute proper use of the technology, because it does help replicate what people know from the film. There's an expectation that the character moves this way in the movie, so I'm going to expect to see the character move that way in the ride.
Right.
So,
Larry Nicolai took me through the Little Mermaid ride, and he was pointing out, that's us, that one's us, Ursula is us, that's Garner Holt, that's us, that's Garner Holt, that's Garner Holt. So it was...
Garner's pretty damn good.
Wow, he's a genius.
Yeah,
and the sweetest guy on earth.
Yes, he was on our podcast.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Garner. And,
hey, plug your podcast.
What's that?
Plug your Zoomcast.
The Zoomcast.
Yeah, give it a plug.
Okay, hey, here's a plug for Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. I do it with Ryan Harmon. We've been doing it for 3 years. We've had, I would say, some of the legends of our industry, not just Disney. I mean, we try to look across it. Like we had Phil Hedema from Universal, of course, Bob Rogers, who started at Disney, then went on to do his own company, and then of course the expected ones, Eddie Sato, Tony Baxter, and our I think what sets it apart is that we take them on a time machine. We have a replica of the time machine from the H.G. Wells movie.
It's gorgeous.
Time Machine. And the idea is that we put them on the time machine and we take them back, maybe to their birth. They choose where they want to start their journey, and then we use that as a device to move through their career. So. 3 years. I think we have 35 episodes, 34 episodes.
We're going to end this part of the interview. Catch Joe's Zoomcast show, Spirit of the Time Zoomcast, or on YouTube. We hope you've enjoyed this look at animatronics from the 1900s to the 1960s. Next time, we'll continue the conversation with Joe Lanzisero. If you want to learn more about Joe's work, please visit lanziserocreative.com. If you want to read my writing about Disney history or Disney's Asian parks, visit micechat.com, the happiest place in cyberspace. Noah, where can people find you?
If people want to find out more about my writing, I write mostly on fighting games. They can just look up the Street Writer Podcast. I also have some episodes on YouTube. If you would like to support these episodes, please subscribe to us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/fab, as in fabulous, F-A-B. We look forward to your support. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. A special shout out to our sponsor, Circa 1955. Nicole is the founder of Luxillume, a small company that makes candles, wax melts, and room sprays. She creates scents that capture the season, nature, or wonderful memories. She also takes commissions for larger orders, such as weddings or company gifts. It turns out that Nicole is also a huge Disney fan and has a line called Circa 1955. She creates scents inspired by all things Disney. This includes the parks, attractions, treats, and films. She creates each formula and batch of candles herself. For every one scent she's released, she has probably made over 200 trials just to get the smell right. Don't take my word for it. Go to circa1955.com, order a candle, and use promo code PINK15. That's PINK15 to get 15% off your purchase. Support a small company that also gives back to the community. You're going to love it. Another shout out to Jim Hill for hosting Pink Monorail on his podcast network. The Jim Hill Podcast Network also includes Looking at Lucasfilm, The Disney Dish, I Want That, and Fine Tuning. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review for each podcast. Have a great day.